Hi friends, my name is Al, or Lilstarnerd, and welcome to today's video. You guys probably don't know this because I never talk about it. I definitely didn't make basically an entire video about it, but I've been really busy. I have just been super busy lately, and I really have not had time to do art just for me. I've had time to make art. I've been making art that I really love, I'm really proud of, I've had fun doing, but nothing like just for funsies. I have not had time to dedicate to my sketchbook, to a lot of my own personal goals, whatever. So I finally had some free time today, and I thought I would do some stuff that I just for me, stuff that I wanted to do because I want to do it. And then I remembered a project, a thing that I've been wanting to do. Probably at this point, like over a month, maybe even 2. I am redesigning some characters. Whenever that video was where I drew Kip, I talked about my zombie apocalypse character. Ever since I did that, I really wanted to basically redesign both of the characters that go in that story. And I just have not had any time. So I've been wanting to do it for so long, and finally today I'm getting to it. So if you didn't see that, I'll put a clip or a photo or something here so you can see who I'm talking about. But there was a video, you guys really liked Kip. I talked about Kip and kind of like why I had created zombie characters and whatever, zombie apocalypse characters. But there's actually a character that goes with Kip named Sam. And Sam I didn't draw, and I very rarely draw them because I just don't like the way they look. They're not interesting to me. So Kip, I've got pretty much nailed down to how I want Kip to look, but there is going to be a change in weaponry because Sam will be taking Kip's weapons. So there needs to be a little bit of reworking for one character, a lot of reworking for another character, and that's what we're doing today. Another reason that I find it really hard to draw my own characters, and specifically why it's taking me so long to redesigning these characters, is because I have a really hard time with poses and bodies. I usually rely pretty heavily on references, but it's kind of like hard to find references for things like this. It's hard to find good standing references. I don't know, it's always really hard, especially for kids, because Kip is a young kid. It's hard. And that's where today's sponsor comes in, JustSketch.me. Thank you so much, Just Sketch Me, for sponsoring this video. JustSketch.me is a tool to make the process of art easier, from planning to getting it on the paper. It makes it so much smoother. It's a tool to help you create art and to create references, which is exactly what I need. It's a super amazing website. They've got more than 200 preset poses and over 20 hand poses, but you don't need to just stick to those. You can make whatever pose you need. Every single joint on the body is workable, so you can make literally any pose, whether they are realistic or not. There's also a bunch of different props in there so you can see how things interact. You can put a bunch of different characters. They have different body types like mermaids, superheroes, anime, chibi. I said finding references for this kind of work is really hard. It can also be super time consuming, finding something that is actually gonna work with what you need. Not to mention if you're trying to make a scene and make it all fit into one thing and make different references from different sources work together, it can be impossible sometimes. With JustSketch.me, you don't need to worry about any of that stuff. You can just make your own reference as you need it, and boom, you're done. Plus, it's super easy to use. You don't have to learn how to use a whole 3D software. All you have to do is rotate some joints on a website. And it's free to use, which is amazing. You can upgrade to get different models and poses, but even just with the free software, you've got pretty much everything you need. I'm going to be using it to make some pose ideas for my characters, so that way I don't need to look for something online and basically just copy whatever I find online. I think it will make jumping into this process a lot less intimidating and scary for me. I love Just Sketch Me, and I can guarantee you that it is going to be a regular step in my process now, especially when doing stuff kind of from my own head, working with my own characters. Sign up to Just Sketch Me for free with no time limit. And don't wait to go do it. Go do it now. I can wait for you. Go ahead, go do it. The first 100 people to use my code Lilstarnerd to sign up for Just Sketch Me gets 20% off. So, slay. Thank you so much to Just Sketch Me for sponsoring. Let's start drawing. Let's go. So, as I said, I've really been neglecting my sketchbook, which at this point is not surprising. But I've really been wanting to get a solid spread done, use up some pages, and return to my happy place, right? And I've literally had this idea written down in a list for so long at this point, to redesign my apocalypse characters. And I was like, you know what? Now's the time. I'm gonna do it. I gotta do it. I wanna do it. Let me take some time for some very indulgent personal art. And because this spread is all about self-indulgence, let's make it the theme for the whole video. I'm going to kind of restate some of the stuff that I've said about these characters before, some of the background and origination of these characters, some other info about them that I may not have shared, and of course we'll talk about like my goals in redesigning and why and all that stuff. So let me start with some background info. I was a young teen during the boom of the dystopian, post-apocalyptic genre with Divergent and Maze Runner and Hunger Games and The Walking Dead and all that stuff. And while I casually liked all of that stuff, except for Walking Dead, I never actually watched that, I never really loved any of the specific pieces of media. No matter how hard I tried, I really wanted to be like a Divergent Hunger Games fan. I just wasn't. But what I did love was like the overall genre. I really bought into that for some reason. I don't know why. But at that time, I wasn't doing art. And I definitely wasn't making my own characters. So I missed out on kind of being, making my OC in that time. So when I did start doing art a couple years later, I noticed that everyone seemed to have some sort of apocalypse character, story, a zombie OC, something. And I felt like I was missing out. So I created my own 2 characters, Sam and Kip. I was pretty attached to them for a bit, but obviously that was back when I actually had and drew a bunch of different original characters on a regular basis. So they weren't particularly special in any way, and they were really only born from the idea that I was obligated in a way to have them. Obviously I wanted them, but you know what I mean. Over the years, as I sort of drifted away from that kind of art that included a lot of my own characters, I really only drew them every so often, and usually it was only Kip. Kip pretty quickly became the favorite and Sam was usually ignored. Recently, with the popularity of The Last of Us, I was reminded of my own apocalypse characters and was really itching to draw them, or at least Kip. So I drew Kip, he was featured in a recent video, and you guys seem to really love him. And I loved the way that sketchbook page came out, and it made me really want to get back into those characters. But I felt so bad for abandoning Sam, like I had felt no desire whatsoever to draw them. And that's when I told myself that I would redesign the characters in a way that sparked that excitement again. But of course, as it so often happens with me, I'll remember how much I love something only to immediately forget again, and pretty much right after I drew Kip in that video, I lost the enthusiasm, of course. Until now. And that's probably because I'm on a bit of a Zombieland kick. I rewatched the first one with my family and I loved it more than I ever had during previous watches, mainly because I watch movies very, very differently now. That made me watch the second one, which was so good. I thought it was amazing, hilarious, probably better than the first. So obviously I've rewatched both those movies a few times now, and it's really got me thinking about the zombie apocalypse all over again. And so here we are, back with Sam and Kip. So now let me introduce you to these characters and like the world that they live in. Or at least like what I was originally thinking when I designed these characters the first time. Sam was a 22-year-old agender person who was a couple months on testosterone before the apocalypse struck. They carried a bat with nails as their main weapon of choice, which is an absolute classic. Had significant scarring across the left side of their head, face, and shoulder. And looking at their original design sheet, I guess they had like self-harm scars, although I don't remember that being a part of their story, like literally at all, like not even a little bit. And that's just weird of me to do. Like, I'm not sure if that's really what they are, because that would just be so weird. Like I don't remember ever adding those in any character design for any character ever, because like it always just made me uncomfy. So I don't know, that's weird to see. I don't know if they really had those or if that was part of their other scarring. Sam's personality wasn't super well fleshed out, except for the fact that they took care of Kip, essentially. Very weak character design from concept to execution. Basic weapon, basic clothes, no personality. Super lame. You can probably see why I never really cared to draw them. In comparison, Kip was a bit over-designed. Kip started out at 12 years old, who was super bratty and like kind of crazy and unhinged. He was orphaned, probably because of the zombies, but also he's like a little wacky and goofy and isn't really outwardly affected by that loss. He had dog tags that I had always imagined he had just like found somewhere else and thought they looked cool, and his main weapon of choice was an axe. All of his clothes were a little too small or too big, had holes and sweat stains, all that stuff. That was one thing I really wanted to include in both their designs. I always thought it was really silly that all these people had really well-fitting or like clean clothes. I mean, the Zombieland movies definitely changed my opinion on that because, like, duh, they could just go shopping, like, literally anywhere. But still, I think having ill-fitting and nasty-ass clothes makes sense. Now, their world, I did not flesh out. like at all. I didn't care about the zombie part, just the characters on their own. I was not interested in any of that. I mostly imagined Sam and Kip kind of just wandering the country for whatever reason or motivation, because that's always the plot of zombie stories, and they stuck together while fighting zombies and meeting other survivors. The main theme of their connection and personal growth and story was both of them kind of growing up in this crazy place. Sam without hormone therapy being thrust into this caregiver position and responsibility and trying to survive into real adulthood, and Kip who was literally growing up, learning about being a good or bad person and dealing with, crushes and whatever amongst a bunch of monsters. So, the redesign. Zombieland has been my favorite depiction of a zombie-filled world that I've ever seen. With so few people left, the world really does become your oyster. Like, why not go sightsee and live in beautiful mansions and take all the world's treasures for yourself, right? The fun side of it was never something I had really imagined. I started seeing Sam and Kip's world kind of in that light, instead of it being some sad, trying to survive, terrible, barren landscape. Now I see it as a world of plot-driving convenience and lighthearted jokes. I think the zombies would be pretty easy to fight and kill, although they wouldn't have been at first, which is why there are so few people left in the world. Maybe after some time, the zombies ran out of their major food source and became weaker, or they turned on each other in desperation and started picking themselves off. Either way, it leaves room for these characters to run around emotionally, theoretically, physically, and have fun rather than be terrified all the time and holed up in tiny shacks. Because these zombies are a bit easier to fight off, it made weapons easier. I didn't want to go with guns, although they definitely use guns when they can find them, but they seem like a logistical nightmare to me, especially considering I don't think either of these characters really know much about how to actually use a gun. Although Kip knows a lot of theory from video games, let's be real. Sam, I would imagine, would be very anti-gun, pre-zombie. So I want weapons that can be used all the time without maintenance, and I thought about what weapon I would use. My thing that I feel theoretically, right? Because in practicality, if you were to give me weapons, I would be so terrible. It would be ridiculous. But in theory, if I were someone who was competent, I feel like double axes would be natural for me. Originally, Kip had the axe, so that was part of the redesign. Part of the motivation for the redesign was giving Sam the axes instead and kind of figuring out what Kip would have instead. I especially thought that I think 2 axes just makes more sense than 1, why not have multiple weapons? But I felt like that just would probably be easier for someone larger with more muscle to use rather than a small child. So I definitely wanted them to go with Sam. But then, of course, I had to figure out what weapon I would give Kip. So I asked my little sister, what she would use, besides a gun, obviously, and she said garden shears. And I actually love the idea of Kip using giant, shears as his weapon. They stab, they slice, they cut. And I can just totally see, the story behind that, them both raiding someone's garage or something, garden shed. And Kip would, grab these, maybe out of desperation, or because, what kid doesn't to mess with scissors, and when you pick them up and you kind of stab that, you cut them open really hard, really fast. I can just totally see him, wanting that, picking them up and then sticking with them just because they're fun. Sam's character obviously is really what needed the redesign. I started with their story and personality, which I thought would help better, flesh out how they would look. Instead of Sam specifically identifying as a gender, I think they would identify as non-binary, and I don't think they're taking any hormones before or after the apocalypse. I think they were assigned male at birth and are comfortable with looking masculine, but, also likes to embrace femininity and maybe sees it more fluid. They are absolutely the mom friend, they're used to taking care of friends and, being there for people. In the original story, I thought maybe Sam kind of got stuck with Kip because they stumbled across this kid and then felt bad leaving it to fend for themselves. But now I'm thinking maybe Kip was the one who was reluctant to go with Sam and would, he would have loved to go off on his own. But Sam, who was such a mother hen, wouldn't let Kip out of their sight. But mostly I think Sam is very down to earth and practical, maybe almost like the mom and dad friend. They've always got snacks, they've got the backpack packed, looking for better, tents and ropes, always the next best thing, into the logistics and the planning. Because of that, and also keeping in mind the apocalyptic-esque vibe, I thought Sam's clothes would be pretty plain. They'd of course love funny, punny clothes and cool patterns when they can get their hands on them, but at the end of the day, those clothes are going to get covered in guts and gore and mud and sweat. So they wear lots of colors that help to kind of hide and camouflage that nastiness. Of course, you've got to have a jacket on hand for those chilly nights, And then when it came to their face, I didn't put too much thought into it, honestly. I didn't really have anything in mind. I just tried to draw something that, something that I would like. A face that I would want to keep drawing. As for the hair, I knew I wanted it to be a bit longer, something that they could feel a bit feminine in, and also practically speaking, like how often are people really thinking about cutting their hair when survival is your biggest priority. So I thought they probably have a bit longer, shaggier hair from some haircut that's grown out a bit, that they keep back out of their face in a low ponytail. Sam also has a few tattoos, none of which are particularly mentionable or notable as of now. I don't know, I haven't put that much thought into it, but they're there. And of course, his bite mark on his left forearm, which is not actually from a zombie, but from Kip, because the kid has issues. I definitely simplified a lot of the areas of Sam's design. I kind of moved away from the supernatural plaid overshirt, which was a staple for me back in the day, because I didn't know what else to do for clothing. And also a lot less scarring, because when I think about it, this is only a few months into the apocalypse, so the scars that Sam had, they would not have them. They would not be, I don't know, I just don't think that would have happened. Maybe it happens in the future, I don't know. But as of now, Sam does not have the scarring. So some of it was really simplified, which I like better. On to Kip. His design stayed mostly the same. I changed his age to 10 instead of 12. I just felt that maybe, that made a bit more sense for the temperament that I thought he would have, the personality I pictured him having. I definitely see him as being an absolute wild child that saw the apocalypse as an opportunity to run free and go crazy, rather than something horrible and scary. He definitely liked his violent video games and was excited to put all that knowledge to use. I see him as very much like the boys in the beginning of The Lord of the Flies. They're so excited to be without adults and to have no rules and to go without things like bathing and a bedtime. Kip is just so excited for lawlessness and proving his competency on his own and having that independence, which I think would create a great dynamic story-wise between him and Sam. Sam, who loves rules and being kind and considerate and constantly feels that they need to reel in Kip, who is a walking, biting tornado. Before, I pictured Sam having to look out for Kip's feelings and well-being and kind of guide Kip through him growing up and dealing with all these new crazy things, but now I definitely see Kip being the more defensive and emotionally protective of the two, as Sam would be quick to trust and way too eager to help others. Overall, I love these as opposed to Kip, who would absolutely not care about other people if he didn't feel he needed to, willing to be ruthless and much better at that kind of stuff. Overall, I love these designs so much more than I did before, specifically for Sam, because Sam is the one who had the most redesigned. I can see now wanting to actually work with these characters way more often, which is great. That was the goal. The spread itself is left a bit blank. There's a lot of negative space, as are the characters and their designs, because I think I would love to keep adding to it all, keep coming back. I think there's lots of little bits and pieces, ideas and objects and parts of their outfits, whatever, that I just didn't think about yet, that I think would add a lot to both of them, things that I can keep thinking of as I consider their stories. I really had so much fun revisiting these characters. The whole concept of redesigning characters, whether these ones or any of my other characters, is something that I've wanted to do for a while, just in attempts to, reconnect with, the desire to draw literally any of them. Pretty much all of my characters were created pretty early in college, and they all served as, some sort of purpose in my life at that time, which was a very sad and lame one. My life is a lot different now, and I don't feel like I need to live my life vicariously through my own characters anymore, which makes it hard to connect with them now. So getting to redesign them was not only a fun project and exercise, but will hopefully spark something new for me. But we'll see. I say this a lot and it never happens, so we'll see. In the past, I really didn't put too much thought into character design. I feel like my approach, honestly, to most areas of art, especially character design, is very vibes first. I just go with it. Whatever I feel like makes sense at the time. And I'm not super creative, right? So really often, and this is still very true, I did it today, the clothes and kind of more designy aspects of a character are always super basic. I go with really similar clothing pieces, t-shirts and a hoodie, all that kind of stuff, similar colors for those clothes. I do the same things over and over again. And there are always a few specific traits that I always go with, like freckles. And especially when I don't have some sort of motivation, there's nothing to keep it making sense and cohesive. So even though neither of these designs are particularly like inspired and interesting, I think it helped a lot that I had a story in mind for these characters before making the changes. Having the practical side of it in mind helped a lot with the design aspects. And while I do love a slightly overwhelming, over-detailed design, I don't love something that's over-designed. So having the idea of practicality that fits the story specifically helped to keep me from adding a bunch of details and bits and pieces that just wouldn't make sense for someone running around in a zombie apocalypse, right? For example, Kip Hat was supposed to have all these like patches and I don't know, like buttons or something all over his jacket. And I, one, don't think that makes sense with his personality, although the jacket would have been found. I just don't think that really made sense. And it was also just unnecessary. It didn't add anything to who Kip was or the story or the practicality of running around in a zombie apocalypse and probably maybe having to use that jacket as a pillow sometimes. Again, thinking about the timeline and the story, I didn't need all those scars on Sam. I think there were a lot of things, especially originally, before I had any idea about anything about character. Not that I do now, I still don't understand character design, but I feel like intuitively I've learned a bit more after years of experience than I did then. Like back then, I would just kind of like literally add anything that seemed kind of fun, and I definitely over-designed. I think it didn't help that I had a super like simple and boring style, so the illusion of detail helped make it feel more full, and now that's like not really necessary because I can add a lot more detail and things like skin and stuff like that. One thing I love about these characters, speaking of like the practicality and the groundedness and reality of these characters, is that because of having that story in mind, they've got a level of real detail that I love and that I feel like I very rarely add to characters, usually because they're not in some sort of setting like this, but also because I just don't think about it. I loved thinking about sweat stains and blood splatters and dirt rubbed into, maybe they've got dirt patches on their knees or the mud flecked up on their sneakers and the ends of their pants, the fraying of fabric. I think it's so fun and it adds so much personality to these characters, and it really shows me how they're living their life. It makes it really enjoyable for me to draw them too. Like the process of doing all of that, and as I was going, thinking about like, what can I add that adds this reality to their life? That was just so fun. It made the process so fun for me. Yeah, I had a really good time like with this whole spread. It really got me in the mood to like draw them again, but also just to do more character design, and I'm really hoping that I take advantage of that and roll with it. Here's the spread. I don't think it's done. Like it's very barren and that bothers me. So I think I might go back and add some trinkets and some more notes and stuff as I think of them. But for right now, I did the part that I wanted to do, so I don't want to keep doing it and then get annoyed. You know what I'm saying? Like I've reached my limit for today. For real, I feel so good of knowing that this is not copied from a photo, because I feel like, I'll use a photo and then I end up getting pretty influenced by whatever their facial features look like. It can kind of make it feel like not only am I like kind of using someone else's work in whatever way, like a photographer, but it also feels like it influences like my style. So because this was literally just a blank body model, this is all me. And I love that, that's awesome. Also, I am much happier with Sam now. I will probably be drawing them much more often. I feel like they are less ugly. I mean, they weren't ugly before, they were just like boring. I kind of like slayed at the coloring style. I can't describe it, but I'm really liking it. I don't know what's different about it, but it's like good. It looks really good to me. This felt really fun and good to do, just to do something super self-indulgent, something that I've been wanting to do and been putting off, like something just for me. I'm feeling really good about it. And also dedicating some time to my sketchbook was really good. I have been missing it, so I'm really happy with the work that I did today. I hope you got to do something good while you watch this video. If you like this video, like, comment, subscribe, the whole shebang, you know what to do. Thank you so much to Just Sketch Me for sponsoring. Make sure you check them out and use my code Lilstarnerd. Don't forget that the first 100 people to use that code get 20% off. I'm gonna go and watch Project Runway. I'm on season 3 right now. So I'm gonna go do that and then honestly do nothing else for the rest of the day and can take some time off. Go watch a good show, make a really weird pose and Just Sketch Me, and go do some art. Bye, see you later, see you next time. I'm so tired. Bye.